everyone, and welcome to another review by ThinkerThemer. I'm Amy, I'm all about the mechanics, and this is my wonderful fiance Maggie, who loves all things theme, the themer, the alternative better half in ThinkerThemer. And
debatable.
And that is the way that we review games. We love to look at them from these two different perspectives, and today we are reviewing Night Market by Adam Zwain, and the publisher is Talon Studios, and we're really excited to have this preview version of the game. It is not final component, so by all means, it's a prototype, so anything that you see is subject to change. We already know that there are some changes in the works of this game, but we're so excited to have an early copy because we love Taiwan.
I think we should address the elephant in the room. I mean, the million plushies.
I don't think there's an elephant, actually. But
million and one plushies in the room.
Don't you love when you do, when you do a board game review and it reveals something about your personality that you hadn't ever put on camera and in the public eye?
Yeah, well, there you go. Now you know. If you thought Amy was obsessed with Kickstarters,
now you know.
Guess what? When it comes to plushies?
Well, not plushies, but specifically plushies that come from a claw machine. I love a skill tester. I can't really walk past one, and particularly in Asia, all of these guys have come out of a skill tester machine and then been brought back in my suitcase, often at the expense of other items.
Of anything else.
Of anything else, no clothing or anything else. Just get rid of that and keep the plushie. They're probably expensive plushie because I've spent so much money on this.
I have to say, this is one thing that when we first started dating and we kind of walked past a claw machine, my experience of claw machines is that, they're really a scam. You never really get the toy. It's always going to do the whole all the way down, grab it, let go, and then kind of come back up. And you're like, oh, come on. And then Amy's like, oh, no, I want to try. I want to do it. And I'm like, oh, here we go. First go. And I still remember, it's like this cute little frog. First go, she got it. And like the whole time, I just have this disbelief in my face going, how is this my entire life?
But the ones in
Australia,
ones in Australia are pretty dodgy. But the ones in Asia, a lot of them are actually completely skills-based, particularly in Japan, and that's what I love about them. But also in Taiwan, and that brings us kind of back around to the game. In Taiwan, we also played a lot of skill testers, but the claw machine is in the game. In the game. There is a whole series of tokens that are in the game. Yeah. We should probably talk about the game.
Yeah, let's move on. So in Night Market, we all play, it's about the night markets of Taiwan, which are these amazing, it's just like the vibe and the atmosphere is so great. They stay open really late. You have all the beautiful kind of like fairy lights. The smell of foods is incredible unless you're walking past a stinky tofu stand, which is just like, Amy's happy to try some.
Give it a go.
I couldn't bring myself to do it, but it is just one of those places that is just magical, and this is what this game is trying to recreate. So we all play stall holders or owners, and we're trying to plan the food that we're going to have available to sell at our night market during our night phase.
Yeah, because the wonderful thing about Taipei City is that every district has this central night market. So you can kind of go from suburb to suburb or area to area, and as soon as the sun goes down, it's just all these stalls open up, and it's just amazing. And they're open so late, but everyone comes out with their family, lots of young kids. It's such a great atmosphere. That's why we love Taipei so much.
The one thing is, like, one of my favorite movies is Spirited Away. And I don't know if you remember, like, when it sort of goes from day to night and then there's all the food and all of that sort of, that's exactly what I felt like when I was there. It was just like I was living a fantasy of, one of my favorite movies.
But that's a bit of context. Going into this game, we were just so excited. As soon as we heard about it, we were just like, yes, because that theme. It just pulls us in, and they've done a really good job of like bringing to life the different foods that you can get in Taiwan. But anyway, let me talk about how the game plays. So everybody has their individual player board, and as Maggie said, you're going to be building up this area with lots of different stalls that relate to different types of food. But then there's this central board, and this game is a bit of a table hog in its current form.
Yes.
It's big. It's a tiny box and a huge game. But this central area is like where you're going to go and collect your goods during the day phase. So the game takes place every round. There's 4 rounds that go across 4 different seasons of the game. And in each round, there's going to be a day phase and a night phase. And during the day phase, you're collecting goods. And in the night phase, you're placing the goods on your stall and selling them to the customers that you've collected. But the interesting puzzle for me is really this center board, where you're going to be taking your meeple on your turn and placing it in one of these spaces. Now, this is set up for a 2-player game. When you have 3 or 4 players, the board is expanded by placing additional tiles in here. And that's just to ensure there's always a spot where you can kind of go, there's more options available to you. And so one at a time, you're placing these meeples out here, and you get to decide whether you take the good that's depicted on that tile, or in this case, you get to choose whether you take a lantern action or take that good. If you take the good, it's very simple. You grab the resource and add it to your stockpile. If you do the lantern action, there are other things that you can do in the game. You can build more stalls here. You can hire a chef, which is like an extra meeple that gets to be put out on the board. And you can attract new customers. So there'll be a central draft of customers per season where you can bring them in, and they all want different foods from you, and food that can be purchased in different positions on the board. So the little board that you're creating is mimicked on the customer cards. Thank you. That's what I was looking for. On the customer card, and they will only buy these certain items for this dollar amount from the locations on the board, and they will only buy 1 item from each of these locations. And so as you collect more and more of these customers, you can see that there's going to be different places on your board that require different types of products to sell. And so that's the little interesting puzzle. The fun thing about this is the way that it scales up as you add more meeples, because your first meeple gets that single choice of taking that resource if you want to collect the resource. But if you add another meeple that has a gap in between one other meeple in a line, so that can be diagonal or along the adjacent orthogonally, you get to take the resource that's in the center of the 2 as well. So you get the one that you land on plus the center. Then on top of that, if you are to line up 3, you get all 3 of those resources. And so very quickly, as you're placing out your 5 meeples, you start to get a lot of resources going into your stockpile. Then what you're going to do, as everyone has placed after everyone's finished on the day phase, you're going to take those goods, you're going to place them onto your stalls. And as I said, you can build other stalls. And sometimes that triggers some specialty dishes or dishes that are worth more money to sell to customers. But essentially, you're placing them on the positions as per the customer card, and then you're fulfilling those orders with your customers and making money. And you want to make a lot of money, and you want to become really popular, because that's how you win the game. Money at the end of the game is worth victory points. There are lots of other things that you do along the way to get victory points. I won't talk too much about the storage and delivery component of the game, but there is a way that you can put resources aside to make them available for the next round. Otherwise, you lose them if you don't sell them, but that's going to be changing a little bit in the game. The other thing is, at the end of each of the 4 seasons, there is a changing objective, and the person who gets the most on that objective gets to choose one of these bonus tiles. That's where the little claw machine comes into play, my favorite tile that features the little claw machine with the toys in it, and it allows upgrades on your board, which is when you turn over a stall to make it more efficient and also to make it worth victory points. So that is a very brief overview of the way that the game works.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about the theme integration. So again, I was so excited when I found out the theme of this game. When it comes to like how well integrated it is, I would say it's there's definitely a sense that there's been a lot of thought put into how things work together. And even from the rule book, there's a thematic explanation for some of the elements. I would still call it probably like a moderate integration, because I do feel like I am planning to optimize the food that I'm going to have available to sell and satisfy my customers that evening, aiming for absolutely no wastage. So having, because there's a little bonus as well when you have, when you've sold out, your sold out bonus. So I do feel like that component. Having said that, I think for me, the bit that I have the most fun is with just the fiddliness of the resource management, which usually is something that Amy is not a big fan of. I love fiddly type games, but I love that the resources that I'm managing are all these foods that I love. There's the the what do you call it, chicken steak, the bubble tea, like the what do you call it, the mochi bowls and the steamed pork buns. So I just, every time I go to reach for those components, I remember those things. So I love that there was thought put into what the items were going to be.
Yeah, and like bubble tea or boba tea is from Taiwan originally.
Same with that chicken.
Yeah, and it's just so fun. And stinky tofu, even though you don't love it. Tofu, but it does, every time you reach for that resource, it reminds me of our time in Taiwan. So it does feel very thematic, for sure. Yeah, but we should talk about how we felt about the game.
Okay, so one of the things that I'll say is, and we'll also talk about the different player counts, because we've played this at 2, 3, and 4.
Yes.
And it does scale differently.
It does.
I will say, regardless of whatever player count we're playing, I really enjoy it because, again, I just love playing with those resources. I realize more and more that one of the things that I love the most in a game is the sense of building or creating something. And because you're trying to optimize and build up I would call it probably your stand area with your individual stalls, I just really love that. And I find that as I'm playing, I don't find it to be a high tension game, but I really enjoy that. So I feel like the puzzle is enough to keep me engaged and kind of going, what am I going to do there and there? But also, I don't feel stressed, which is nice.
Yeah. For me, and if you watch our channel, you'll know that I prefer high levels of player interaction. So the puzzle itself is fairly, as Maggie mentioned, low tension, low stress, especially at a 2-player count. I found that it wasn't particularly tight. I could almost always do anything. As that scaled up to 3 or 4 players, that's when I found that I enjoyed the game a lot more, because this puzzle became a lot more tense because someone would go where I needed to go, and because only one player can go in each spot, it was just like, and also, some people were hate drafting the spots that I needed. And as much as that annoys me at the time, it's like that's part of my enjoyment of the game. So I really kind of enjoyed that part of the game. I should say that it doesn't need to be high interaction at all. Maggie doesn't really take spots that I need. She's more focused on her own puzzle.
And if you have my thing.
If you have friends that are really much more focused on this multiplayer solitaire aspect of the game, then certainly it's a nice peaceful experience. So for me, at 2 players, I was not as pulled into it as I was at the higher player counts. It's a really interesting puzzle. As I mentioned, the dynamic between having a space between your meeples and then lining up 3, that actually creates a really nice, in your head, trying to think about the way to be most efficient on the board. So I really, really like that part of it. We actually spoke to the publishers about some of because Maggie mentioned it is a little bit fiddly, and one of the things is that you're collecting all these resources during the day phase, and then you're placing them onto your stalls in the night to then take them off again to then go into the customers. And I was finding that a little bit tedious in repetition. And after speaking to the publishers, and you'll see on the Kickstarter that there is an advanced variant now where you just place those resources straight onto your stalls. And I can see why they didn't do that to begin with, to make sure there was no AP slowing the game down. But I really appreciated that everything we pointed out to them about the game, they were so open to changing, evolving, and they've got player testing going on at the moment. And I have a complete faith after those conversations that they will iron out the kinks in this game. And it is a really fun puzzle. And all of our friends that we introduced this game to really enjoyed it. And it was lovely to see that they just really they really took to the puzzle and they understood what to do quite simply. But it's not a short game. Like it's quite a meaty game.
Yeah, it's quite a meaty game. That's what I really love about this, is that there's enough. It's not a heavy game.
No.
Where a lot of the games that we played with friends, they're not heavy gamers. They're gamers that are trying to get into heavier games. But there is, and again, that talks to the sort of theme, not so much theme integration, but logic of the actions that you're doing make sense in a thematic way. So you can kind of go, oh yeah, so I would first get my resources, and then I would, put them in my stall, and then I give them to my customers, sell them, and all of this sort of stuff. I love that it's, even though it's what I would consider a moderate game, there is enough in it that you can try multiple strategies over different games. And that's something that I have been doing, and that's something that I'm still quite excited to continue doing. So I'm keen to explore it. I know there's going to be a solo variant.
There is going to be a solo variant, which you're very excited
so
about.
excited for that. We didn't have the instructions for the solo, and I don't know if there's going to be also additional cards that would be needed for that. But this is something that I would gladly play solo as well, even though I haven't played it solo yet, just because I enjoy the experience. Yeah, I enjoy the experience of what I'm doing, regardless of the player count.
Yeah, and I believe they're going to add in some expansions. We also spoke to them about some ideas for stretch goals, so you'll probably see those by the time this video drops, that there will be some interesting stretch goals. Would love to see some kind of storage solution, because there are a lot of bits.
Yes.
It's one of those games where, we had to grab some containers and throw in all the little bits, because there's a lot of like exchanging of resources and that type of thing. Yeah. Just because of there's a lot of resource management in this game. But yeah, we've had a lot of fun with this prototype, and we can't wait to see kind of how it's brought to life.
I also want to acknowledge that the designer lived in Taiwan for how long? Something like
quite a few years, I think,
or something like that. But they've also they made sure to engage a cultural consultant, which I think is really, really good, to make sure that obviously things are done in a respectful manner, that they actually represent what happens in the culture, and so I thought that was really
because
good
it felt like someone who had lived there had created this, because there were lots of nods to the things that we remember when we were
our
there.
Experience.
But it is super important that when you are representing another culture, to get a cultural consultant in, and so we're so glad that they've done that.
Yes.
And have no doubt that, as we mentioned, from what you see here to the copy that's going to be delivered to you in a year or so, they're going to nail it. Yeah. And so we've been really impressed with this little game. We hope you enjoyed this review. We do a lot of reviews of this type of content, so hit subscribe if you haven't already. But otherwise, we'll be back with more reviews soon. But thanks for tuning in. Bye for now.
Bye.